Downstairs neighbor demands we walk normal. So we do. And she hates it. We've been living in this apartment for 3 years. It's old. It's cozy. The building is 20 years old, and though the appliances and wall paint and carpets have been replaced, the floor has not. It's painfully thin. Every step we take creaks and groans, and it's annoying. Living on the 3rd floor, we know it's gotta be even more so for whoever lives below us. So, we've done our best to be mindful of their comfort and try not to make too much noise. We had a new downstairs neighbor move in a couple months ago, and she is not convinced that we are literally tiptoeing around our apartment. Every time I get home and close my door, she's banging on my floor with a broom or something. Every time I cross the living room, banging. Every time I vacuum, banging. Every time my dog chews on a bone, she bangs on the dang floor, and it scares my poor dog. We've been living on eggshells trying to be courteous, but she's driving us mad with her insistent banging every time we take a step. I guess she had finally had enough, because she came upstairs to yell at us the other day. "You are too loud. You need to be courteous and walk normal. You have neighbors." Quote. She yells. She almost looked like she was going to cry. It was disturbing. We felt bad. My husband tried to explain that, "Ma'am, we do our best to be quiet, but these floors are really old and they creak. We're not stomping or jumping or running. We're living, but we'll continue to be considerate." She was not impressed with his answer and continued to argue. "Well, I lived on a 1st floor before, and my other neighbors weren't loud like you. It's so loud, and my job is so stressful, so I want you to stop stomping. I don't want to be a mean person, but I really think you're too loud. So you know what we agreed to? To walk like normal people." Okay, we'll walk normally," we said. This is exactly what we had been doing. Nothing different. So she still bangs on the floor and gives us nasty looks. But we are being normal people who walk normal and don't stomp around. Our dog is a normal dog who chews on bones and walks from his bed to his food bowl, and gets excited when it's time for walkies. We are so normal. We'll be moving in the next month, so it's no skin off my back. Hope the next tenant doesn't have kids. Or maybe I do. And then she'll finally understand that we are normal people who walk normal. Maybe she'll miss us. My last apartment was like this, and I was on the 1st floor. I finally realized it was the floors because I heard her cat jump down from somewhere, and I swear to God I could hear the cat walking across the floor. Is a 20 years old building really considered old? You don't have old floors. You have cheaply constructed floors. The company who built the building is to blame. We had a problem like this with my mom's apartment. The new downstairs neighbors were complaining about the noise. Since they seemed pretty nice, I went down to their apartment to listen as people walked around. Upstairs, I had first listened to Mom walking normally when I was next to her. I could barely hear it. When she walked that way again and I listened from below, it was louder. The floor-ceiling chamber was like a drum. I put down some cheap carpet on the tile floor to mitigate it to some extent. The real answer will be to fill the cavity with some acoustic treatment. I suggest you go downstairs and listen, and if there are 2 of them, have one come up to your place and walk softly while the other listens. Both sides need to have the other person's experience. Then you might be able to work towards a solution. We lived on the 2nd floor of an older 3-story apartment, and right away it sounded like there was a bowling alley up there. The neighbor came down to welcome us and apologized for the noise. They were also tiptoeing, but the floor's ceiling was awful, and they were trying their best to keep as quiet as possible. We loved them. We also did the same for the neighbors below us. The guy played the cello, and it was nice to hear him in between strikes winking face tears of joy. Sorry, you have an old building which is 20 years old. That's not that old. For anyone curious, Impact Insulation Class, IIC, is the rating for the ability of a floor-ceiling assembly to block impact structure-borne noise from transmitting to the space below. The Uniform Building Code, UBC, and the state of California set minimum standards of 50 IIC laboratory and 45 FIIC field ratings in multi-family dwellings. At this rating, footfall noise from a person walking on a floor above is clearly audible, and it is possible to follow the progress of the walker around the room. Thus, these building code standards do not represent good building practice. Rather, they represent minimums below which it is illegal to build. It is only when the IIC ratings are above 65 that heel clicks begin to become inaudible. Copic, 1990. https www.sciencedirect.com/topics/engineering/impact insulation class. So OP could potentially do a test to see if this building is in violation of the building code. But I would like to see these standards get increased significantly, because this is one of the largest reasons why people don't like living in multi-family buildings. Side note, there's also Sound Transmission Class, STC, which is a similar rating for sound going through walls. I hope the new neighbors are members of an Irish dance troupe and they host the practices. I was able to hear my downstairs neighbors talk late at night when most people were trying to sleep, and got them to stop when I started talking back to them while lying in my bed. It was hilarious cause I could hear the pause and listened if that was really happening, like they said something and I would go, haha, no way dude, no way, that's crazy. Our upstairs is like this. We hear them walk, hear their dogs play, hear their Xbox, and he owns a drum set. Except for the drums, it's just apartment life. At my old apartment, my heavy upstairs neighbor got a wee fit. That was hell. I had this when I lived in my apartment. I was tiptoeing everywhere, never listened to anything loud, and they constantly complained. They even tried to tell me I needed to go to bed at 10 p.m. so that they wouldn't hear me. I was a student who often needed to work late. It was an ancient building, and my landlord told me to ignore them because they did this to everyone who lived above them. Funny enough, a friend of mine lived underneath them and told me she could hear them having sex and all the other noises they thought nobody could hear. I finally snapped one day. Finals make even the nicest person lose it, and told them that I had done everything possible to be a good upstairs neighbor, but I was going to stop caring. I threw in the fact my friend lived below them and congratulated them on their loud sex life. I also mentioned my landlord bringing up their history of being complainers and suggested they give up apartment living because it clearly wasn't for them. Tears of joy. They moved out a few months later and it was amazing, haha. My wife and I had this literal same experience a year ago when we first moved in. The tenant below us complained to the property manager saying we must have been dropping bookcases, and they thought there was a domestic violence issue. We asked about when these things were happening. It was always when we weren't even home. One of those times we were told the noises were from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. The lady finally knocked on our door and told us that our two dogs, 50 pounds each, needed to walk quieter. We brought it up to the property manager and never got a complaint again for the remaining 9 months we were there. Funny enough, the meetings we had with our property manager about this sparked a conversation that led to her being our realtor for our current home. Thought the last place I lived had thin floors. We could hear the upstairs neighbors walking around, playing with the dog, by tapping repeatedly on the floor at 2 a.m., vacuuming daily, arguing, etc. So when I met the downstairs neighbor, I apologized for the noise from us even though we tried to be quiet. She said that she never hears us. I assumed she was just being polite. Well, after about 18 months, our upstairs neighbors moved out and a new family moved in. I'm not sure what the original couple were doing, but the new family was quieter on the day they moved in than the other couple on any given day. Barely heard anything from them. Just enough to know they were there. I used to live in an apartment that was just a 2-floor building. It was in a tiny town, way out away from any major roads. So I thought it would be nice and quiet since there weren't that many people in the building. Both of the apartments on either side of me were empty, and I was on the 2nd floor. But the floors were nice and thick, so I didn't think I'd ever have any issues with people complaining about me making noise. Since I was living alone at the time, and I'm typically a quiet person anyway, the first night I moved in and get my bed set up and a few boxes unpacked. I get ready for bed kind of early because I was tired from the move, and crawl under the sheets. I'm almost asleep and I suddenly hear someone screaming like they're being murdered. The floor was thick enough that I couldn't make out any distinct words. But since I was just out of college and it was my first apartment, I kind of freaked out. But I didn't want to panic. So I called my dad and asked him what I should do. Should I call the cops? The live-in building manager? My dad asked if the screaming was still continuing, and I said yes. So he said to try the building manager first, and if I couldn't get hold of him, then call the cops. Luckily, I did get hold of the manager, and he apologized and said he should have warned me. But the lady who lived below me was in her 60s or 70s. I forget which, and was about 90% deaf. She was screaming at the Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune reruns and did it every night. Everyone else was used to it, so he forgot to mention it to me. She only did it at night and only for about 2 hours. There was some legal reason why they couldn't ask her to move out, if I remember, so I just had to deal with it. Believe me, I got a good pair of headphones and started making sure to wear them when I got home to drown her out. It was thin walls in that place that really ended up bothering me. Even though the apartments on either side of me were empty, being renovated, the 1-2 down from me on the left was occupied by a family, and they were as obnoxious as all get out, blasting rap from their speakers at full volume every day, but especially on the weekends, when they would also keep the apartment door open when the weather was nice. They would also scream at each other. It was a constant tirade of F this and F that and F you. They were loud enough that my headphones couldn't even block them out. More than once I went down and asked them to keep it down because I needed to sleep. That usually shut them up for a day or two, but then they'd be back at it. Fortunately, I didn't end up living there long, about 9 months. If I remember, before the job I moved there for fell through and I moved back to the same town my parents live in. I feel bad for my downstairs neighbor. One of my cats really throws his weight around when he's not getting the attention he wants. Seriously, at 4 a.m. he'll throw himself off my bed as hard as possible and then jump back up to try and get me to play with him. I of course have to concede and make him stop so he doesn't wake them or my other cat. I don't know. Now that they've heard you being normal, it might be time for another chat with them. I hate walking on eggshells too. But at least the neighbor would have an understanding of what you were doing prior to your first conversation. That's not how I thought it would go. Since you were already tiptoeing around, I figured walking normal would actually be louder than you have already been. Thanks, neighbor. You've finally freed us of our obligation to walk on eggshells. We'll just walk normally now. Kids with pogo sticks and recorders that need to be played. Maybe you should stomp and jump around so she knows what normal walking sounds like. Also, carpets help for future since you're moving. We live in a reasonably nice place. It's almost soundproofed except the floor still carries vibrations. We lived in a middle floor so we feel vibrations from upstairs once in a while but not enough to be bothered about. And we had this cranky old dude who kept coming up to complain about how loud we were. We were so new to the country back then and we were worried and went out of the way to be quiet and kept apologizing. We basically tiptoed in our own apartment. We even got these shock-absorbing pads to put under our appliances. And one day he was ruder than usual and almost got into a verbal altercation with my partner and we had to push him out of the apartment and close the door behind him. We were stupid and allowed him to step inside to talk. We called building security because we were very worried and asked if we did anything wrong. And the security guy assured us he will come up immediately. Then he apologized and explained how he's sorry we were that worried because apparently that old man was bothering everyone. And rather than us doing anything wrong, he told to call him immediately if he ever bothers us again. And he will handle it right away. I think the talk went well because we never got another visit and we stopped all the tiptoeing and lived peacefully. The cantankerous old dude moved out soon after.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.